You can be my.
All right. Good evening, everybody. We thank you for joining us. We're here with Keystone with Kenny tonight. We have special guests Archie Manning and Dan Fouts. Pretty excited about this. So join us. Kenny, why don't you take it from here?
Well, thank you, Kevin. And hi, everybody. This is our third installment of Keystones with Kenny. Once again, we're coming to you live from the Keystone Lights studio in my garage. Man, what an exciting night. The NFL kicks off tonight. It's Kansas City hosting Houston. Once again, thanks to Chris at Stagnaro and Deanna with Molson Coors for arranging the Keystone Lights sponsorship for us. We really appreciate that. I want to start tonight off with a toast. So if you grab a drink somewhere, last week, Christy lost her brother. And he was the biggest sports fan, the biggest Bengal fan I've ever known. He would love these happy hours. So right now, a little toast to Johnny Cummins. Man, Johnny, we miss you. Rest in peace. And this Keystone Lights for you, buddy. Don't forget to go to KenAndersonAlliance.org and buy your raffle tickets. Remember, we're raffling off one of my signed jerseys. We've also got a helmet. If you look at the pictures on the website, it's half the stripes, half the old. I've signed that for you. We've got dinner for 4 with Christy and I at Walt's Hitching Post over in Northern Kentucky when we're up in town. And also 4 Ultimate Airline shuttle tickets. The only way to travel if you're flying out of Cincinnati. Also, you can also find raffle tickets. Dave Lapham and I have our golf tournament coming up in October. And one of the raffle items is you're going to get on a private plane. You're going to fly to Kohler, Wisconsin. And it's 2 nights and 3 rounds of golf at Whistling Straits. So you got to make sure that you take advantage of that. And also our good friend Bengal Jim, the season's starting. He's still going to have his tailgate, even though there's no fans in the stadium. And he's going to have a raffle for us to benefit the Ken Anderson Alliance. It's going to be one of my Augustana jerseys that I've signed, a helmet that I've signed, and a football. So you can go to the Bengal Jim BTR, which is before the roar, before the game starts. He's on Facebook, or he's on Instagram, he's on Twitter, or you can go to KenAndersonAlliance.org, go to fundraising, and you'll see Bengal Jim, and you can buy your raffle tickets there. But what better way to start the football season than with 2 great quarterbacks? And of course, we'll have Dan Fouts coming up in a little while. He's still warming up from that 59 below 0 game that we played in back in 1981. We're going to start off with a guy I've known since 1971. He was a legend at Ole Miss. In his first primetime college game, all he did was throw for 436 yards, 3 touchdowns, ran for another 104 yards. He married Olivia, the homecoming queen. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1983. In 1981, he was the 2nd pick in the NFL draft. And what a draft that was. It was Plunkett, it was Manning, it was Pastorini, Lynn Dickey, some guy named Anderson, and Joe Theismann. Please welcome my friend Archie Manning. And Archie, with all the hurricanes and the pandemic, how the heck you doing down in New Orleans?
Well, we're doing fine, Kenny. We dodged a couple of hurricanes a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, our good friends over in the Lake Charles area got hurt pretty bad. But we're doing okay in New Orleans. I was riding downtown today. It's kind of quiet there. And as you know, there's a big all the NFL kicks off. Of course, it kicks off tonight. Got a pretty big one here Sunday afternoon in New Orleans with Tampa Bay coming in. I understand they have a new quarterback and coming into
Brady
in a late game. So that's it'll be no fans there. I think the Saints are going to be able to possibly have fans in their second home game, which I believe is against Green Bay. But there'll be no fans for this one. But we're doing okay here in New Orleans, just trying to get through these tough times.
1971, that was labeled the first year of the quarterback. We talked about it, Plunkett and you and Dan Pastorini and Lynn Dickey and myself, Joe Theismann. But, I'll take that draft class. It'll stack up against anyone, don't you think?
That was a good draft. I'm very proud to have been part of that draft. Of course, I knew Jim. I'd met Jim on a little trip our junior year. I didn't know Dan Pastorini because he played out at Santa Clara and anybody from Ole Miss and Santa Clara didn't meet, but I knew Joe Theismann and had run across him. And you mentioned, of course, you at Augustana. Lynn Dickey at Kansas State, outstanding player. You know, Scott Hunter, who was in the SEC, an Alabama guy, he was a quarterback that year and got some years in the league. So yeah, I'm very proud to have been part of the class of 71. The only bad part about it, Kenny, it's been almost 50 years. That's that's what kind of hurts.
Are you saying we've aged some, Archie?
I think so.
I think the only thing that we've aged in is our golf ball just doesn't travel as far anymore.
It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go. I definitely got the power elite, believe me.
I tell you what, you know, it's always fun, you know, seeing the old highlights of you, and you were so mobile, and the scrambles that you had, and reversing course, throwing the ball down the field. And, you know, of course, tonight we've got Patrick Mahomes, we got Deshaun Watson, you know, Lamar Jackson. The way the game is now in the NFL, you'd have fit right in with that, with all the run pass options.
Well, maybe some of
all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, some of the running and scrambling I did in those days was because I had to. I think some of theirs just by design. There are some tremendous athletes at the quarterback position these days, and there were good athletes in our day, but not like these guys. We've been fortunate, Kenny, to have most of them down in Thibodaux, Louisiana, during their college career at the Manning Passing Academy. So we kind of we bring in 40 college quarterbacks each year to be counselors. So it's kind of fun to get to know those guys. And you see, and we don't necessarily see their agility. When they work out there, it's mostly just drop back stuff. But these two tonight, I mean, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, we had them both. They throw the ball good too, but then their ability to escape and make plays, it's funny. You know, I've got a grandson playing. It's funny how he tries to copy Patrick Mahomes, and I understand it. I'm sure all the young quarterbacks right now, you know, when they go out and throw the ball around, they're on the playground, whatever they're doing, they throw those little moving sidearm passes that Patrick does, and trying to imitate him, because he's truly off to a great start in this league.
Well, you know, you mentioned your grandson. I was going to get to this a little bit later, but you know, I'm on Twitter now, if you can believe that, and I got about 9,000 followers, and so I kind of put it out that you were going to be on the show tonight. Dan was going to be on any questions they'd like to ask, and Greg Spencer responded, and he said, you know, your grandson Arch may be the best of the bunch, you know, and he says, can you compare him to Peyton? He's going to be a sophomore in high school, I believe, right?
Yeah, he'll be a sophomore.
Yeah, and how do you compare him to Peyton or Eli at this stage of the game?
You know, I kind of got in a little bit of trouble last year when someone asked me that. He got to play. He won the starting job as a freshman. So I was in Indianapolis at this media thing, and someone asked me, and I said, well, he's probably a little bit ahead of Eli and Peyton at this stage, because he's playing, and he just Peyton and Eli did not start as a high school quarterback until their sophomore year. So I would just meant, obviously, if he's playing as a freshman, he'd be a little bit ahead. Fortunately, he had a good year, and he's looking forward to playing again. It's fun, you know. It's fun to be back watching high school football. It's so pure and good. We're kind of fighting down here to get them on the field. We're not going to start. It looks like we're going to get to start not till October. Still struggling a little bit here in New Orleans, trying to get our mayor to turn things loose. But it's fun, and he's having fun. And you know, Kenny, you played the position. You played the position great. You played it for a long time. You got to enjoy, and you got to have fun playing. That's what I tell him to do.
You know, we talked about some of your highlights, you know, of the scrambling around and the great mobility that you had. And now you got two sons that each won 2 Super Bowls. What happened to their mobility? They weren't noted for that. What happened there?
No, they weren't runners. I know it used to bother Peyton. He was a young, about Archie's age, about a sophomore. And he was, out of my 3 sons, he was kind of the one that had kind of studied my career. I mean, he'd kind of really studied it. And one day he said, Dad, why can't I run? Why can't I run? I said, I don't know. But I said, just learn how to stay in the pocket and get rid of the ball. You'll be fine. So it worked out okay.
Oh man, and two of the smartest quarterbacks, they learned that from their dad. And, I think that had to be an advantage from them. I mean, being around a dad that was an NFL quarterback to see how you prepared, because I think that's one thing that both Peyton and Eli are known for is their preparation.
Yeah, well, as you said, they got to play 3 years of high school. They weren't runners, so they had to kind of stay in the pocket and learn where to go with the football, get rid of the football, all those things that quarterbacks need to learn. And then I feel like they had just unbelievable coaching in college. Peyton went to Tennessee. He had an offensive coordinator named David Cutcliffe, and Kenny, I don't know if you've ever met David. He's the head coach at Duke now.
Yep.
But he is truly one of the best quarterback coaches I've ever seen. Just the little things. And so Peyton was very, very fortunate to because he played in a small high school. Our high school is small here, 2A football in Louisiana. But David prepared him well, and they had good years at Tennessee and prepared him well for pro football. And then Eli was trying to make his college choice, and he really wasn't going to Ole Miss until David Cutcliffe got hired as the head coach there. And so as soon as David got hired as the head coach, he decided to go to Ole Miss. And again, even though David, he wasn't the coordinator, he was the head coach, he still called the plays. He still worked with Eli. And so I felt that just had a lot to do with their career and the success they had and their knowledge as a quarterback. And, they even did late in their career, they would, in first part of April, before the workouts really started, they would gather their receivers, try to get 3 or 4 or 5 of their receivers, and they'd go to Duke and they would work out with Cut for about 3 days. Peyton called it knocking the rust off. And they'd go back and he would tell them, and you can appreciate this, Kenny, he'd say, start us out just like we're freshmen today. Let's go, let's start. Just any little thing is wrong, correct. So I think you can appreciate that. And they were very fortunate to have David.
Yeah, Timothy South, kind of wrote in, and your oldest son Cooper was not a quarterback, but he was a receiver, and he was Peyton's favorite target in high school, and he went to Ole Miss and hurt his neck, and his football career was over. But had that injury not happened, do you think Peyton might have followed him to Ole Miss rather than going to Tennessee?
Yeah, I think he would. Cooper was a senior. Cooper made All-State his junior year as a receiver. Peyton was a freshman then, didn't play. But then his senior year, he's coming back, and Peyton won the job. So they got to play together that year. And that was, I would think Olivia and I, we'd probably agree, that's probably our most enjoyable year of football when they got to play together that year. Now, it was a little embarrassing at times because Peyton didn't throw to anybody but Cooper. And I'd tell him, I say, Peyton, maybe you ought to spread that ball around a little bit. He said, Dad, Cooper tells me he's open on every single play. Does that sound familiar, Kenny? You never had a receiver, do you?
It does. I can remember that a
lot. But, I do think, I think if Cooper hadn't had neck surgery and a problem, had to give up the game, Peyton probably would have seriously considered Ole Miss. I think they did want to play together.
Yeah. Well, now it's time for our first trivia question, Art. So don't blurt this answer out just yet. But last week we had no correct answers. We had one for the Johnny Bench one, but that came after the show was over. You had a chance to look it up. So remember, Johnny Bench once held 7 baseballs in his hand at one time. Steve Cawthon was our other guest. His first win as a jockey came at River Downs, which is now Belterra Park. And tonight's question, the first correct answer at info@kenandersonalliance.org is going to receive one of my Pro Bowl t-shirts. All other correct answers receive a Ken Anderson Alliance hot cold cup. So tonight's question is, Archie was a great athlete. How many times was he selected in the Major League Baseball draft? How many times was Archie Manning selected in the Major League Baseball draft? And we'll give you that answer coming up. Art, the last time we were together was at the Super Bowl in Minneapolis, and they kind of honored a lot of the Man of the Year award winners, and Peyton was there giving out the award that night to J.J. Watt, and I talked to you as we were going down on the stage, and I remember that night Peyton comes up to me and tugs me on the back of the sport coach before we went on the air. He says, "Man, Ken, did you talk to Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, I had a chance to see him." And he said, I wish I could have played when you guys played. He said it was so much more fun then. You guys actually got to know each other. We're so busy. He said, I don't know the other guys in the league. And I really think we did play in a special time.
It was a special time, Kenny. You know, you and I spent a lot of time together. We'd go to this, we'd kind of on the golf circuit together during the off season. Remember some great places we used to go with our families and so forth. Yeah, but Peyton's kind of a throwback. He really is. Is kind of a throwback. He studied the game back when we played. He studied it before. He studied quarterbacks and so forth. And I think in a lot of ways, he was kind of an old-fashioned quarterback, and he really has a great love for the game. I don't know if you got to see some of the Peyton places that he did, but he really asked him to do that. And it was really celebrating the 100 years of pro football, but he loved that. He loved going and spending time with Joe Namath and talking about, you know, Joe's Super Bowl and his accomplishments and everything. And other court, he just did one. He's still doing it. They're going to do some more. They're doing another thing. He just did one with Fran Tarkenton. Fran was around, you know, when you and I came in the league. Now, he was the original scrambler and making things happen for the Minnesota Vikings. So, yeah, well, I'm glad Peyton. One thing Peyton does know, he knows all the class of. He did something with Pastorini. He went over to the Astrodome and did a thing with some of the.
The first guy that wore the black jacket.
Guys that you played against every year, Elvin Bethea and those kind of guys. But he's kind of a throwback.
You know, and when you talk about that and where he kind of studies the game, and it was so much fun. We had that quarterback legends group, you know, for a while there, and we got to know guys. You know, some of the names I wrote down that I went and found some old footballs that I got autographs on. Otto Graham, Charlie Connerly, Y.A. Tittle, Johnny Unitas, you know, Daryl LaMonica, Lenny Dawson, George Glenn. We got to hang around those guys. That was great.
That was fun. We did that for several years, and that truly was so much fun. I can remember the first time I met John Unitas. He did he was doing CBS 1 year early in our career, Kenny, and I mean, I was totally awestruck. You know, I'm supposed to talk to him a little bit about our game plan or what we're doing. And, you know, I kind of wanted to ask him about Alan the Hoss Amici or Jimmy Orr or Liddy Moore and so forth. But, you know, one thing I always appreciated, I hope I did it. I hope I was nice to young quarterbacks because they were all nice to me. And you know, we all kind of get a little more familiar with people in our own division, the teams that you play twice a year. Now, we were in the NFC West when I came in the league. Now, I'm not really sure why New Orleans and Atlanta were in the West, but we were. We were in the West with San Francisco and Los Angeles, the Rams and 49ers. And John Brody was in his latter years with the 49ers, and Roman Gabriel was in the middle of a great career with the Rams. Both those guys were so nice to me. You know, we'd play them twice a year. Now, maybe the reason they were so nice, they'd beat us and whoop up on us pretty good, and they'd have good games. But still, you really appreciate it. And I'm sure the same thing for you. I'm sure there was a lot of veteran quarterbacks that took a little time with you, and that's really appreciative. I hope I did that. I hope my boys did that.
Well, you've done a great job of that. I can know that firsthand, but you know, and some of my research, and I hate to say research because Johnny Bench gave me shit last week because a lot of my research was wrong. But what I was reading about it, in 1976, you had surgery on your right shoulder, missed most of the year. And then you went to the radio booth the last half of the year. And how was it up there doing the games when your teammates are down there? I mean, could you be critical?
You know what happened? Believe it or not, Dick Butkus was doing the radio for the New Orleans Saints that year. The radio announcer was he was actually a local TV guy who did Saints games. And he and Dick Butkus had been on a USO tour together. Remember those USO trips?
Oh, yeah.
And so they asked him to do the games. He did it. But about mid-season, I guess he got tired of it. He quit. So I had surgery. I wasn't going to be able to play that year. Hank Strand was our coach, and they asked me to do it. And I was bored, you know, I was rehabbing my shoulder. I couldn't do it, so I did it. Yeah, I did radio later on too. I was always a little careful about, you know, what you say on the air. I always did radio games for the Saints with thinking that players' wives are listening to me today. Whether they were, they probably weren't. The wives aren't listening to me, but I always try to make my comments like maybe their wives are listening. Be careful.
Yeah, well, a big difference. I did that, after I was retired, did it with Dave Lapp, did the Bengals game. And so I'm an ex-player, but all of a sudden you're a current player. You better watch.
Oh, yeah, that's different. That was different. It was just a half a year, so I got through it.
We talked about your passing academy, and I had the pleasure of going down there and coaching one year. And not only were those young kids, really getting some great instruction, but you mentioned bringing the top college quarterbacks, in as well. And I remember not only, Peyton and Eli would go out and work out with them, but it was those meetings they had with them, telling about what life in the NFL was going to be like. And, one of those guys that you had a year ago happened to be with the Cincinnati Bengals, the number 1 draft choice, Joe Burrow. What did you think about him when he was down at the passing academy?
Well, I was impressed with Joe, and I read about Joe when he left Ohio State and came to LSU, and then I found out his dad grew up in Amory, Mississippi, which is really not very far from Oxford, Mississippi, where Ole Miss is. And his dad's a coach, longtime coach. He's he was in college coaching at Ohio. So, but he was going. He never got to see Joe play very much, so he gave up coaching and was going to watch Joe play his final year at LSU. So I got in touch with his dad. We knew a lot of people in Mississippi and everything. I invited him to come down to the camp too, and got to know him, spend time with him. Joe was very focused. He was impressive in our camp. Now I will say that, I mean, he did great when they'd work out, but I had no idea that he would have the type of year that he had at LSU. I mean, and you saw it, Kenny. You don't see as many games of LSU as we do down here in this part of the country, but I just don't remember a college quarterback having, or I don't remember a college offense being as productive week after week after week as that offense was. And they were playing they put a big whipping on, a good whipping on Alabama, a good whipping on Oklahoma, Georgia. I mean, it really, really impressive. Joe is he's very focused young man. He's smart. He moves pretty good, but he makes very good decisions. I think he's set up. He'll never be a Kenny Anderson with the Cincinnati Bengals, but I think he's got a good future in pro ball. Who knows how the first year will go? It's a huge step. It's a big transition. It was in our day, and it is today. But I think he'll be a good player. I think Cincinnati will be proud of Joe Burrow.
Well, back when we played, I remember going as a rookie. I think I reported to training camp July 7th, and we broke, September 15th. We didn't have, an off-season program, so 7 weeks.
Then we played 6 preseason games.
Correct. The league never opened until the last Sunday in September.
Right.
So I mean, we had, that time, and later on, they've got the OTAs, they've got training camp, they've got 4 preseason, and now all of a sudden for, a rookie like Joe, the first time I go was when they kind of opened the facility and, okay, we can have some meetings and there's no training camp. And, it's got to be hard for a rookie to kind of.
It really is. That's tough for a rookie.
Young improving team to try to come in and make a difference.
Joe to get thrown out there Sunday afternoon. Are they on the road at Sunday? Are they at LA?
San Diego comes to Cincinnati.
Oh, they're in Cincinnati. Well, at least he's at home. Well, but still with no, just no OTAs, no preseason games. I mean, that is really tough. He'll stand up, and I'm sure they'll try to give him all the help they can. But there's always pressure on that number 1 draft choice, but I believe he'll handle it. I think he's made of the right stuff, and I think he's someone repeat again, somebody at Cincinnati will be proud of for the years to come.
Well, the thing that, not only what he's done on the field and watching him, last year, as you were talking about, I never saw him have a bad game. He just looked the same in every game, and they're playing the toughest schedule, in the country. But I think I was more proud of him after the season to see him stand up, accepting the Heisman Trophy, and then going on and realizing the platform he had and the hunger problem they had in Athens, Ohio, and Athens County, where he grew up. And, and all of a sudden they raise $500,000, you know, from that speech. And then seeing him and understanding the platform that he has, and he's taken a leadership role in Cincinnati. And I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of with him.
Yeah, and that's going to serve him well. You know, I think another tough part of being a rookie quarterback in this league, being the #1 draft choice, coming in, starting right away is in that locker room, you know, to become, get the respect of all the other players, your offensive players, your defensive players, coaching staff, and so forth. And I think Joe, like you said, he's checked all the boxes so far. I think he's done everything right. He's really, he's an outstanding young man. And I'm not from Louisiana. I'm not an LSU fan, but you had to just be impressed with that year they had last year. And I am a Joe Burrow fan, and I'm really very proud of him.
You know, I got one story I want to tell here and see if you remember it the way that I did. And my son and Peyton are the same age, and you know, they were both 16, and they had this quarterback throwing competition in Hawaii. And you know, we were the old guys, you know, the active guys were there. They got the big money on national TV.
Oh, yeah.
We got a little bit, you know, we were going to be on cable. And everybody said, you know, aren't you guys going to go out and practice a little bit? Oh, we can only throw one time. If we practice, we can't throw the next day. And so we get over there, and I'm with my son, Matt, and you're with Peyton, and Sonny Jurgensen had his son there. And Kenny O'Brien was the active guy. He kind of joined. We're kind of at an outdoor bar sitting there. And with the time change, because we were a little older, you and I go to bed, and Kenny O'Brien says, I'll take care of the boys. About 2 hours later, my son, Matt, comes in and says, Dad, after you left, Mr. O'Brien started buying us beers. And he said, and then he left and stuck us with the check. And we told the guy, we're not even 21. So I always tell people, you know, Peyton is Mr. Goody Two Shoes, but I knew him when he was drinking beer at 16.
My oldest son, Cooper, was involved in that. Cooper was just 2 years older. He was involved with that. The good news is Eli won but about 11, and he won with them. That's the good news, Kenny. But I remember it well. We had to go settle up that beer bill.
And O'Brien was the one making the money.
You were just starting quarterback. It's stuck a bunch of 16-year-olds with a beer bill.
You know, when they started the college football playoffs, you were one of the 13 inaugural members of the college football playoff selection committee. Give us a little insight into kind of what goes on in that process each week.
I was honored to be asked to do that, Kenny. I had to drop out a little quicker than I wanted to after the first year. I was having another back fusion, and I couldn't make the meetings. But I went. We had a lot of preliminary meetings we set up to do that. I was really impressed with the plan, the strategy, the work. It was a lot of work. I mean, you talking about, you know, as quarterbacks, we're kind of trained to watch film, watch tape, and so forth. That committee watches a lot of tape and anticipation of going to Dallas every week and spending a day and a half, really a day and a half, just throwing everything up on the wall and trying to come up with a top 10 team. And at the end of the year, you know, pick the 4 that are going to be into the playoffs. So I was honored to do it. I didn't get to do it. Most of the people on there for 3 or 4 year terms, probably get a little better at it. But I was impressed. So I've always kind of stood up for the playoff committee. Sometimes people, you know, I guess if your team doesn't get in, some people get mad, and a lot of the writers take shots at them. But I just got to tell you, that group works. They work hard. They put a lot of time in, and they try to do it right.
Well, and now it's time to give our answer to the trivia question tonight. And the trivia question was, how many times was Archie selected in the Major League Baseball draft? And now, do you know this, Archie?
I know.
You know the answer. You know, when my answer says it's 4 times by the Braves, the White Sox twice, and the Texas Rangers. Is that
Kansas City Royals?
City Royals. You're absolutely right. So we'll see if we have any correct answers. I'll let you know on that. What? You're this great baseball player. Did you ever consider taking one of those offers?
You know, I was a left-handed batter, and I really couldn't hit a left-handed curveball very well. So I kind of thought my future may be in football. The last time I got drafted, was by the Royals, and they said, well, you'll be assigned to Waterloo, Iowa, the Class A team in Waterloo, Iowa. I kind of always thought I would have probably spent my baseball career in Waterloo, Iowa.
Oh, geez. Much better in New Orleans. And Archie, I can't thank you enough, but I would be remiss if I didn't make this comment that I've heard your son, Peyton, is a member of this club just a little ways away from me up in Georgia somewhere. And I just want you to know that if you and Eli and him are there and you need a fourth, I can be there in an hour and a half.
I'm gonna make a note of that, and I'm gonna tell him that. It doesn't. Okay. I'm telling him your drive's not very long anymore, but you're good company, and we'll work on that.
Archie, thank you so much. I hope you'll do this again. I got 2 more pages of questions I wanted to go over, with you, but tell the boys I said hi. Tell Olivia, always one of the most gracious women I've ever met, and tell her I said hi and all our best, and thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Kenny, it's my pleasure to be with you. You've been a great friend for a long time, and be sure and tell Mr. Dan Fouts hello for me.
Well, bring him in, or let him say he's waiting right here in the wings. Kevin, bring Dan in, let him say goodbye to Archie.
I see him.
Thanks, Arch.
Okay, guys, have a good one. Thank you.
Hey, Kevin, I want to bring back you in real quick here. One of the things we're always looking for with our foundation, the Ken Anderson Alliance, are volunteers. If someone's interested in learning more about our foundation, learning how they can volunteer, how can they do that?
Yeah, we are always looking for people to volunteer and help us. That's how we keep our staffing costs down. And you can go to our website, kenandersonalliance.org, and go to the Contact Us page or form at the bottom. Submit that, and we'll get right back to you and coordinate you with a wonderful lady named Teresa Ciamponi. Also, if you'd rather just email, you can email us at info@kenandersonalliance.org, and we'll get that over to Teresa.
Well, I tell you what, the Bengals open up Sunday against the San Diego Chargers, and I'm really excited to have our next guest on. We've had a lot of epic games against each other. He played in the NFL for 15 years with the San Diego Chargers. He led the NFL in passing yards 4 straight years. He was the first player to pass for more than 4,000 yards in 3 consecutive seasons. Went to the Pro Bowl 6 times. He's on the 1980s All-Decade team. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The Keystone Nightstand are getting to me already. Please welcome my friend Dan Fouts. Dan, thanks for being with me tonight.
Kenny, it's always great to be with my idol.
How, with all the pandemic going on, how are you doing? I know there's a lot of wildfires going out west. Are you guys doing okay?
Well, we are. There's over 50 fires in the state of Oregon right now. And then you got Washington and California both battling the same situation. There's a lot of smoke in the air. Fortunately, where we are right now, knock on wood, we're not threatened by any fires, but it's been devastating for these 3 states, what's gone on since Labor Day.
Have you finally warmed up since that AFC Championship game? You're looking pretty good there.
I don't know what you're talking about. What game is that?
We'll get into that a little bit later, but you and I do have something in common. The beard is not one of them. I could never grow something that would be that nice. But we were both 3rd round draft choice. You were the 64th pick. I was the 67th pick. You were drafted in 1973. That was my first game against the Chargers. We went out there in 1973, and John Hadel had retired, and Johnny Unitas was the quarterback of that team. And we happened to win. I think the score was 20-13. And as I looked it up, Johnny U was 15 out of 31, 215 yards and a touchdown, but he was sacked 6 times. And I remember, it was like playing against my idol. I remember his face being bloody after the game and says, why is he doing that? When did you took over later on in that season? When did you take over for Johnny, that rookie season of yours?
I think it was the 5th game of the season. And as you said, Kenny, I mean, he was pretty much done. 40 years old and had played such a fantastic career with the Colts and came to San Diego. He didn't have a whole lot left, but what he gave me was a lot of those little tips that you need as a quarterback, especially a young quarterback, the nuances of reading defenses and how to try to beat a defense and using your eyes and using your head and all the things that go that went into making him, in my mind, the greatest quarterback that ever played. And for me to be in the locker next to him, Kenny, it was just fantastic. And one day, I even when he wasn't around, I looked over in his locker and I saw those shoes, those high tops, and I said, I wonder how these would fit on me. So I slipped one on, and it felt like slipping on a moccasin. It was so comfortable. I could see why he wore them. But he quickly came in and said, "Hey, get out of my shoes."
Well, as I remember you, your back pedal was a little bit like Johnny Hughes. Did he teach you that move as well?
Well, he said you want to see the field. And if you use your head properly, it won't be a key that you're always throwing to your left if you're backing out. So it was a little bit slower, but as you're going back, I could see everything I needed to see. And so, and having him telling me all those little things I needed to do as I'm dropping back to pass, it all worked out.
My career really changed in 1976 for a while when Bill Walsh left. And he went that year out to San Diego. What did Bill Walsh mean to your career?
Well, he saved my career, basically, because, we weren't a very good team for those first 3 or 4 years with the Chargers. And he showed me tape after tape after tape of you and Greg Cook and the things that you were doing in Cincinnati and trying to get me to try to copy what you guys did. Of course, I couldn't because I didn't have the athletic ability that you two have. So, but I learned about the timing of his offense, the discipline of the drops. You know the whole thing, Kenny, because I was studying you and learning how to play quarterback all over again. Because up to that point, I had 4 offensive coordinators in 3 years in San Diego. So when he finally got there, my 4th year, things started to turn around. But you talk about being devastated. He left after that 76 season because the Chargers did not hire him to be our head coach. He went up to Stanford. And fortunately, in 1978, Don Coryell came to San Diego, and that's when things really started to turn around.
That was my next thing. When Don got there in 1978, it was Air Coryell. I mean, that was a dynamic system. And, you guys became, I have it written down, the first pass-happy team. Up until that time in the NFL, it was, you run the ball a lot, you play good defense, you kind of throw when you have to. But all of a sudden now, it's you guys are attacking with the passing game. You guys were the first to do it.
Well, we had the talent to do it. We had a big, strong offensive line. We had Hall of Fame receivers and Charlie Joyner and Kellen Winslow. I had John Jefferson and Wes Chandler, Little Train James and Gary Anderson, and the list goes on and on. But it was the system. All our routes were adjusted on the fly. And because of that, I didn't have to audible hardly ever, if ever. Because I knew whatever pass play we had on, based upon what the defense is trying to do to us, that our receivers would make the right moves, that I could anticipate they would make the right moves, and I could get the ball to them.
You mentioned all those great players that you had on offense, and you also had 3 Pro Bowlers up front, Ed White and Russ Washington and Doug Wilkerson. I had it pretty good for a while. I had Isaac Curtis on one side and Charlie Joyner on the other side. He was real happy when he went out there. You made him a Hall of Famer.
Well, you started him because that was when Bill Walsh got the job in San Diego in 76. That's the first move he made, is he said, we need Charlie Joyner. And we needed him for the weak side passing game, which Charlie was so good at and so tough over the middle, catching all those bad passes of mine and yours over the middle that made him the Hall of Famer.
M. Keys wrote in, and he wants to know who was better, John Jefferson or Wes Chandler, in your mind?
That's impossible. I get that question a lot. Who was better? And then they even add Joyner and Winslow to the mix. And I said, the way I categorize it is that with Charlie, Mr. Reliable, I knew he would get the necessary yardage and make the catch. With Kellen, total mismatch wherever you put him on the field. JJ would make the most spectacular one-handed catches you've ever seen. And Wes Chandler, after he catches the ball, is gone. He can run through an entire defense. So they all had that special quality that I really appreciated.
Now, Rusty Old Dog sent to me on Twitter, wants to know, how badly did you miss James Brooks when you traded him to the Bengals?
Well, you talk about the worst trade in the world. We got a guy that weighs twice as much as James Brooks and produced half as much. And you know who I'm talking about. James Brooks was a great player, and I still don't understand that trade. It just, you know my reaction.
Yeah. Well, and of course, I got to play with James, and, he could run inside, he could run outside. He was a factor in the passing game, and, maybe pound for pound, one of the best running backs I've ever been around.
Well, and I know you'll remember this, that he would attack tacklers. He would explode as a guy, and he only weighed like 185 pounds, but he was so tough. He was one of those typical Auburn running backs. They all had that same face mask. They all led with their head and shoulders, and they were all good. And James Brooks, pound for pound, as you said, I hate that term, pound for pound. He was one of the toughest guys I ever played with.
Yeah. Of course, now that brings us to the 1981 season. And we'll go to the kind of your first playoff game. You're down in Miami against the Dolphins. It is hot. It is humid. One of the classic games of all time. And one of my Twitter followers, the Complete Pete, wants to know, was that one of that's got to be one of the greatest games in NFL history?
Well, it is recognized that way. I'm just glad we won it. We had a 24-point lead at the end of the first quarter and had to go to overtime to put the Dolphins away. But it was a great game, great effort. Don Strock did a great job for the Dolphins. Their whole team fought right to the bitter end, but so did our team. And looking back on it, so many people remember that game, Kenny, that, I know I didn't ever play in a Super Bowl, but I played in that game. And I think more people remember that game than remember, 3/4 of the Super Bowl games.
Mm-hmm. Of course, now the next week you come to Cincinnati for the AFC Championship game. What was your first thought when you stepped off the plane on Saturday?
Actually, we came in on Friday night to get acclimated to the weather. But remember, we had to fly from Miami back to San Diego, and we were so cheap in those days that we always had to stop halfway to refuel. So we didn't get to San Diego till late Sunday night or whatever it was, and we practiced, and then we had to fly to Cincinnati and stop and refuel halfway as well. So we got in late Friday night and went out to the stadium Saturday, and it was brisk, but nothing like it was the next day.
And we both struggled trying to throw the football.
Oh, Bull.
Well,
you didn't struggle at all.
Well, I remember trying to throw out to Pete Johnson. The ball goes end over end. It didn't come close to him, but it wasn't as much the cold as it was the wind that made it hard to throw. Yeah,
the combination, at least for me, I was never a real tight spiral thrower like you. And so if my ball got out of spiral in a windy day and out of great grip on your hand, how about these excuses, Kenny? Pretty good, huh? Yeah. I was in trouble. And I threw two dead quails towards the end zone that were both picked off. And that kind of hurt our chances. But I tell people, and honest to God, the way you played in that game, the way you threw those tight spirals and delivered your team to the Super Bowl is the reason we lost that game, not because of any weather.
Well, I appreciate that. But the one thing that I do feel guilty about that day is, you lost a tough game and you got to go out and you got to fly home and you go to the greater Cincinnati airport, which happened to be in Boone County, Kentucky, and the plane is not there. So you've got some time to kill. And it's a Sunday. The bars were closed. I should have come over and at least slipped you a bottle on the bus on your way out there. I felt bad about that.
Well, you weren't a big Keystone guy at that time. So, we could have used a truckload because we were at the airport for 4 hours because our plane was frozen in Chicago. And then, of course, Kenny, the end of the story is we had to stop halfway before we flew all the way to San Diego.
Well, if we would have had cell phones in that day, you could have called me and I could have made a delivery for you.
Well, you wouldn't have given me your number. I know that. You're not that.
No, no, because the thing that I always, you were my idol because we played a couple of Pro Bowls together in 81 and 82, and you weren't really a golfer. And I go out after practice. Pro Bowls were great practice and meetings. They got to be done by noon. I'm playing golf all afternoon. And somehow you knew a guy in Honolulu that owned a bar, and I would meet you every night and we got to drink free. That was the greatest 2 weeks of my life, those 2 Pro Bowls, because of you.
Right. I got to tell you, it wasn't quite free. I paid for it all, so you owe me.
Oh. Well, it's really been having you on the show tonight, Dan, and we got
send that Keystone truck my way.
You got it. But now it's time for our second trivia question. And remember, the first correct answer to info@KenAndersonAlliance.org gets an All-Pro T-shirt. The other correct answers get a Ken Anderson Alliance Hot Cold Cup. And as we said earlier, that Dan set the NFL passing record in 3 straight seasons from 1979 to 1981. When he first set the record in 1979, whose record did he break? So I hope my research holds up on this one, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. You know, after that, the 81 season, we came out and played you guys on a Monday night in November in San Diego. And I remember we had a great offensive coordinator at that time, Lindy Infante. And, you know, we're hearing, you know, Eric Coryell. And I remember Lindy must have said, well, we'll see if we can throw it a little bit too. I think we threw the ball 20 straight times to start the game that night. But you had over 400, I had over 400. You guys thumped us pretty good. But was there a little revenge motive for that game?
Well, you know, the week before we beat the 49ers in San Francisco. So we went back to back against the Super Bowl teams from the year before. We beat the Niners, we beat you, but you know, that really wasn't revenge. It was just we were rolling at the time. But I remember standing on the sidelines watching you. I think you completed all 20 of those first throws. I remember saying to Joyner, does he ever miss? And Charlie says, not very often, Dan.
In 1983, what I researched is that you almost got traded to Baltimore for the rights to John Elway. Is any truth to that story?
You know, I've heard that. I think it's an urban legend because, you know, I was going through some negotiation problems, as it seemed like we always did, right? And I'm sure that somebody floated that story, but it never quite drifted my way. There's no way I was going to go to Baltimore. I tell you that. If Elway ain't going there, I ain't going there.
Well, Frank Cush was the coach. I mean, you didn't want to run up and down those hills to get in shape?
Well, you know, they had a great quarterback in Burt Jones. So what do they need me for, you know?
Well, it was at the time that Burt hurt his shoulder, though. I
think he did. Yeah, he had a neck injury or something. But, you know, people talk about John Elway and everything. Burt Jones was John Elway before Elway. You know, you remember how good he was?
Well, I remember, I was at a Pro Bowl with him, and it was either 75 or it had to be 76 out in Seattle. He and I were the quarterback, and he would, you know, warming up, he would throw the ball on the wrong side of his head. I mean, he just had a tremendous arm. And, you know, of course, his dad was a Hall of Famer, Dub Jones, you know, with the Cleveland Browns. And, you know, it's just another one of those great quarterbacks. Unfortunately, his career ended too soon.
Yeah, no question about it. And he was in my draft class, along with Joe Ferguson, a couple of great ones.
Yeah. In fact, we beat Joe Ferguson before we played you guys in the AFC Championship game. But another one of my Twitter followers, Doug E. Fresh, wants to know, when you retired, did you ever think about going into coaching?
No. You want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah.
No,
I mean, you had such a great offensive background, you know, such great, you know, success. You know, you were such a smart guy. Maybe you're too smart to go into coaching.
Well, the thing is that I did have a few, not offers, but a few telephone calls. And I was living in San Diego at the time, and San Diego had a coach, and I didn't want to leave San Diego. And then I moved to Oregon, and I really didn't want to leave Oregon. So no teams are up here. And so coaching thing never worked out. But, you know, getting into broadcasting, as you know, Kenny, is kind of like coaching. You can coach both teams. And at the end of the day, you're sitting in the first class of that airplane flying home without stopping and not even knowing who won the game. So it's a little bit different.
Well, speaking, you went into broadcasting, and your dad was a Hall of Fame broadcaster in the San Francisco area. So you kind of, was that in the back of your mind when you retired that broadcasting might be, in your future?
Yeah, I was kind of like, thinking about playing ball. I wanted to give that a try, and I knew that I really wanted to give broadcasting a try because I experienced so much just sitting next to my dad, keeping stats for him, whatnot, and seeing how he operated. And hopefully some of those genes came my way. And so 32 years later, there you go.
No, I remember one time, it was the year I went into coaching, and after about 10 years in Cincinnati, they're gonna have the #1 pick, and Mike Brown thought it was very important to scout people in person. So I'm the quarterback coach, and Carson Palmer was out there, and so you're doing the Notre Dame Southern Cal game, and so I'm out there on a Saturday night scouting that game, and it was a chilly LA night, and we're both walking in. We had a chance to talk. We were both looking for gloves to put on our hands that night, and I still got some residual effects. How about you?
Yeah, exactly the same as you. I remember talking about it. It's like from the halfway to the fingertips. When it gets cold, you're worthless. And same thing with the feet.
Well, I have a 50-degree rule now when I play golf down here in Hilton Head. If it's 50 degrees or below, the sides of the golf cart come down and the propane heater goes on the inside to try to stay warm. You've been broadcasting about 30 years. What's going to be on tap for you this fall?
I'll be watching. Yeah. CBS did not renew my contract, so I'll be a spectator, and be interested to see how the whole broadcast works now with the virus and the fans and all that, and how the players are going to handle it. So yeah, I'll be watching along.
Oh no, what's your take? I mean, we're going to start tonight. I mean, it's going to be Kansas City and going to be Houston. I've been impressed with so far that they've been in a semi-bubble as far as training camp is concerned, and they've had very few positive tests in the last several weeks. But do you think the NFL is going to make it in the long run as the season starts now? And some of the young guys, they leave the facility, and I'm going to go back. I ain't cooking. I got to go somewhere to eat. Well, I might like to have a beer. Do you think the discipline stays there, to prolong the season?
Well, we can only keep our fingers crossed that that's the case, Kenny. I mean, it is the numbers, the variables involved in football, and not just the players, but the coaches and the training staff and the support staff. Everybody has to be super disciplined in order to get through this. Now, with the NFL, that they're going to do everything they possibly can, and they're doing that now. And we'll see how it works out. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I know that.
What were your thoughts when the Chargers moved from San Diego to LA?
Is this a family show, Kenny?
Yeah, it kind of, sort of is.
Yeah. I feel bad for our fans, and I feel bad for the players that identified with the San Diego Chargers. San Diego, before the Chargers got there, was basically a Navy retirement town on the Mexico border. And really, when the Chargers came from Los Angeles in 1961, they made San Diego a big league city, and especially when the AFL joined the NFL. The Padres came after that. So for the Chargers to leave, it has hurt so many San Diegans and fans that were with us through thick and thin. And there were a lot of years when it was very thin before things got good. So it's just unfortunate that city and the management and ownership of the Chargers couldn't get it together. But that's life in the NFL.
Best defensive player you played against? Wow.
Well, I did play against Lawrence Taylor, and I have a slightly separated right shoulder because of it. Does that count? How about you?
Oh, well, I'm having trouble picking just one.
I know it.
No, it was kind of that Steelers defense that they had in the 70s and early 80s. I always thought that if it wasn't for that defense, maybe we would have had a couple more chances to go to a Super Bowl. But they had.
You had to play them twice too.
Oh yeah, how many Hall of Famers do they have on that defense? I mean, it was just one of the great teams of all time. Unfortunately, in our division.
Yeah, and it started up front with that guy in the gap between the center and the guard with the number 75 on his jersey. My goodness, Mean Joe.
Yeah.
Wow.
I always, I would say that Joe Green was the first guy that knew what playing on national television could mean for him. And, we all remember that Coke commercial. He's walking in, the kid gives him a Coke and he throws the jersey, and so, he gets in that gap and, he had a great first step and a jump off the ball, and you had to try to slow him down. So first play of the game, I said, all right, the count's on 3. I'm going to try to draw him off sides on 2. So it's blue 98, hut. And nobody moved but Joe Green and picked me up and, behind the line of scrimmage says, Kenny, don't make me look bad on national television. I went on and won the rest of the day. We got beat 31-10. So I should never listen to a defensive lineman. But Dan, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Oh, we got to give the trivia answer first. So to see if you know the answer, so you set the record for yardage 3 straight years. The first year you did it in 79. Whose record did you break?
Some guy by the name of Joe Willie Namath, 4,007 yards.
Yes, and you broke that record, and so hopefully we'll get some answers on that. I'll let you kind of know how that's going on, but I hope you will come back and do this again. I've had so much, I got a lot more memories I'd like to share with you, and it's been so much fun. But please come back and join me again.
Well, I am really thirsty now, Kenny.
You know what? I'm going to call Deanna with Molson Coors, and I'm going to find out who the distributorship is out there in Oregon. I'll get your address, and I'll see if we can't get some shipped out to you.
You know
and maybe
what?
a bottle of tequila to go with it.
You got it. I did play in Margaritaville, San Diego. So there you go. It's great seeing you, buddy.
Man, you're looking great. Keep up the good work. And, man, I tell you what, this is the 3rd week we've done it now. And I've been with Chris Collinsworth and, of course, Archie and Johnny Bench, who I've known for years. I'm having so much fun doing this, just kind of reconnecting with everybody. And I'm working on Charlie Joyner. So I get him. I might have to have you join him when we get him back as well.
You've always been good at connecting, Kenny.
Okay. Stay out of trouble, Dan. We'll see you soon.
You got it, bud.
Oh, I don't want to bring Kevin back in now. And want to remind people, Kevin, that 2 weeks from tonight, it's comedy night. So we've got 2 of the funniest guys you've ever heard. We've got Josh Sneed. We've got Scott Henry. That's going to be a fun night. But, we've talked the last several weeks how we're way behind in our donations because a lot of our fundraising events have been canceled. We're kicking off our annual campaign. If somebody wants to get involved with that, how can they do that, Kevin?
Yeah, so if you'd like to be a part of our capital campaign, please visit our website. We'll have a annual appeal page up here very soon, probably by next week on Tuesday or Wednesday. You can also, when you visit the website, you can join our mailing list and you'll get direct mail opportunities to help support us.
Tell us why these dollars are so critical to our mission of creating live, work, and engage opportunities for adults with disabilities.
Yeah, well, it's takes money to do everything, right? So we have, these dollars help us keep our programming going, pay our staff, pay our workers at the farm, where we do aquaponics. And something I like to always point out that's great about our aquaponics program is all throughout this COVID, we have been able to maintain employment for adults with disabilities at our farm who are growing lettuces in a food desert. And then we were donating most of that product to area food pantries to give to families in need. So, it just speaks, wealth to the mission. And those dollars help us, support us to do that. It also helps us advance towards building our live community. One of the biggest issues we've got here in Cincinnati right now is a very, very low surplus of housing for adults with disabilities, affordable housing. And, our mission is to get that resolved and get some really good options out there for people in shared services. So all of those monies help us to advance that mission.
And one of the nice things we have going on with our work program, and people want to help us out, is they can go to our store at KenAndersonAlliance.org, and you can go shopping, whether you want to buy jerseys, whether you want to buy T-shirts. Our adults are making bath bombs, greeting cards. Tell us some of the things that we've got online that you can buy.
Yeah, so we've got a great variety of house-made products by our adults with disabilities. We've got greeting cards, bath bombs, lip balm, lotions, bath salts or scrubs, all kinds of neat stuff. And then we have lots of memorabilia. Today, we just posted up some really great looking KAA polos in women's in gray and men's in white. Lots of great products there that people can buy. All the money that comes in goes to support our retail program where we employ adults with disabilities.
And one of the things that we are lucky is to have your leadership as our executive director. And you know, we're only as good as our staff. And when you talk about, you know, Leslie and Teresa and
Yep.
Gio and Kate and Michael, tell me if I'm forgetting somebody. But no, they do such a wonderful job, and we could not be successful without them. And sometimes they don't get enough thanks because they're behind the scenes.
That's right. And they do a lot of work. You know, we're all a team, just like when you were on the field playing, you know, it took everyone doing their part. And our team is the same way. Everyone does their part, and we've been, you know, hugely successful. So it's been great.
Well, in 2 weeks, we've got comedy night, which I am really excited about, with Josh Sneed and Scott Henry. In the meantime, I would encourage everybody, please go to KenAndersonAlliance.org, see what we're all about, see if there's a way that you can help. And we really appreciate it. I know all nonprofits, unfortunately, in this time of COVID-19 are struggling. We all need help. We need your help as well. And if you see what we're doing, I think you'll be impressed and want to be a part of it. And so, Kevin, hey, thanks for everything tonight. It's Keystone with Kenny. We're here in my garage. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
It's great. Thanks for joining us, guys.